Hello and welcome to today's video where we're going to look at the world's 2024 teams and how they allocate their resources a bit. And not only that, but also like we're trying to identify the outliers here and make some assumptions based off of just simply damage share and gold share about these teams, especially the minor region teams, which I know I have not watched much at all before the event. I will try and watch the finals for every minor region just to get a basic understanding of some of these players I've never seen before. But there are outliers here, and it's interesting to think about. And then throughout my roll videos the next 5 days, I'll add a different stat than shares and utilize that. So let's start with top lane. Mirwin, 27.7% of his team's damage. Mad Lions Koi clearly heavily favoring the top side of the rift when it comes to carry-oriented champs. A lot of their damage share. I mean, hell, the next highest is 24.1, and then Kiea with 23.6. And when we think of Summit, we think of carry-oriented top laner. We've seen him in the LCK, LCS, LPL. And then Kiea, historically, one of the better minor region top laners in the world. And we saw even in spring his numbers were crazy when he was dealing with the whole situation where, I mean, half the league in Vietnam were under suspension for possible match fixing. Kiea was not, and he had to 1v9 for his team to get them to MSI. But we see that those three players very high in the damage share department. They're taking on a big chunk of their team's damage. But then you have Doran 369 and Sniper. And one is not like the other two, and not only skill or reputation or anything like that, but Sniper, to me, is not a weak side top laner. I don't think of Sniper as a weak side top laner at all. Look at his champion pool. Look at what he picks. He's not like Doran in 369 where you could see them, hey, they're going to be on an island and mid to late game, they'll team fight really well. And that's shown in well, hell, actually, they're not even dealing all that much damage in team fights, right? But also HLE and Top Esports are two really good teams. In very, very competitive regions with great players around them that are also dealing damage. We have to factor that in. But Sniper, by far the lowest. Now, when we compare it to the gold, this is where things get a little interesting, and we'll talk about it more the next few days. Mirwin leads in gold share. Okay, so positively, he's dealing the team's damage at a high level, and he's also taking on the most gold of any top laner here. But then it's Zeus and Zika, and those two are not up there in the damage share, are they? So, theoretically, their return is not quite as strong as you'd like it to be, given the circumstances. But, are they getting, more facilitator-oriented picks? Then you could say, well, why are they getting all those resources? Why are they getting resources, what I'm trying to say, if they're not going to be dealing a lot of damage, right? You want damage if you're giving resources. People want to say, oh, well, you frontline and this or that. It's like, look at Zeus's champion pool. Yes, he played a lot of different stuff, but, he played a lot of different things. So there are a lot of carry-oriented champs in there, and I'm sure that I wonder what the shares look like in those games relative to his facilitator games. On the lower end of things, though, Keen Sniper Evi. So Sniper, low gold, and low damage. Okay, that works. At least 100 Thieves aren't, the resources aren't really going into Sniper to begin with. But then you have Evi and Keen, very low resource, but are dealing enough damage that they are not in the bottom three. So, in the end, they're packing quite a punch relative to what they're receiving. And giving the team some return on investment that's quite nice. And in the case of Keen, very nice because it's Gen G, a good team, and Keen is showing how good he is as a player. Now, another inference, we can look at jungle. Adi has the highest damage share at 20.9% for Rainbow 7. So Summit and Adi for Rainbow 7 account for 45% of their team's damage, and that's the highest out of anybody in this event in the top side. It's obvious because they're both up there. But then it's Yike and Tarzan, and Yike, not a big surprise, better as a carry. Dealing high damage, and Broken Blade ended up not getting all that much damage as a result. And then Tarzan, Weibo made a great decision bringing him in. On the lower end, Peanut inspired Elyoya. So Peanut and Doran combining for roughly 30.5% of the team's damage. So HLE's damage is not coming from the top side, it's coming from the bot side, and we see it here at nearly 40%. But that's something that we can think about going into this tournament, that, HLE, they're not playing carries topside quite like, Rainbow Seven. They're probably never going to play each other because that's two opposite ends of the spectrum. But we're still looking at how teams are very different in that regard. Inspired, playing facilitators. Elyoya, the lowest, with Mad Lions Koi. But we're going to combine that with Frescawi in a minute and say, wow, they have very low resources here. Mirwin's taking on that brunt. Levi, highest in gold share. Not a big surprise. Levi carry-oriented jungler. But he is not giving them top 3 damage share. So are the resources going to the right place? You'd like to think so, but the damage isn't really coming out quite like you would like. Forest of SoftBank Hawks Gaming of Japan. Quite high in resources. So even offset, you think Evi as an example. You have very high jungle resources and very low top laner resources. Maybe Forest is taking some of Evi's farm. And then we have a 3-way tie between Tien, River, and Yike for high gold share. Yike then, appearing high up on the damage share as a result. Lower end, Elyoya, Razork, and Wei. So Razork and Wei, 17% of their team's gold, but they're not at the bottom here. Playing more carry-oriented champions, or at least getting more out of their facilitators than an Inspired and an Inspired and a Peanut, who are getting higher resources than you would like. And we discussed it on the Discord, Peanut in particular, how in the mid to late game he has very high resources. Like he farms more than I think. He may have led the LCK or was second in the LCK and in farm as a jungler post 15, and it was like, given his champion pool, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And they won, so it worked. But at the same time, you do wonder how that would look at this event. Mid lane, Quad, Chovy, Maple. I think I might have said this when I talked about FlyQuest and Quad. Korean import player comes into NA and dominates the mid lane. Not a big surprise in my opinion. The mid lane pool is not the strongest. And then we think of Chovy, excellent player. Maple, solid player that is dealing a lot of damage, more than I was expecting. I'm surprised. He's one of the heaviest carry mid laners at the tournament. But then you have Katie, Emo, Frescawi, so both Vietnamese mid laners there. Very opposite ends of the spectrum in their career reputation. Katie, more so known as formerly GAM's mid laner and then leaving a lot to be desired, playing a lot of crazy shit in mid. Emo, very raw player that went to MSI pretty much as almost like a debut. He played a little bit with GAM before that, but it was essentially like he was as green as you could get. But that's something to think about, right? 2 Vietnamese mid laners towards the bottom in the damage share. Their meta, not really heavy in the damage department. But then Frescawi. And I'm very critical of Frescawi, but Frescawi, 22.5% of the team's damage. Very low damage totals out of him, and very low gold also, which is, at least he's not wasting resources necessarily, but he's not giving the team much in return in a carry-oriented role. And when you combine Elyoya and Frescawi, that's 34.5% of the team's goal damage, and 39.8% of the team's gold. So combined, they're not giving the team back the damage, and that's coming mainly from Mirwin. It kind of goes to show just how much Mirwin is giving this team in terms of value in the damage department. Because even Supa Alvaro, very high in gold, but not up here in damage necessarily. Gold shares. Surprisingly, Katie leads at 25.3%, but yet is right here in the damage department. So Vikings Esports need to figure out what Katie is doing with this damage. With this gold, and why are we not getting damage out of it? And if that is, he's playing this champion. Well, why is he getting all this gold? Dasher, on the other hand, probably dealt upper 30 maybe 30% of his team's damage, if I recall. He's just barely off of this list, 25.2%. Very strong Korean import mid laner. I mean, Korea dominates. It just is what it is. That's why we see that, players from Korea in every region in some way, shape, or form. So Dasher joins Japan, and for years he's been pretty solid. And he's taking a big brunt of the resources. APA as well with Team Liquid, 25% of the team's resources. Very resource heavy. Lower end, Keen and Showmaker doing a lot with less. They're not in the bottom three here, but dealing their damage, I'm sure. If you really think about it, we'll talk about it a couple days, more so. Faker, very good at doing a lot with a little, as Zeus is taking probably more than his share of gold. And Frescowy. Frescowy, at least he's getting low resources for the damage he's dealing. Bot lane duos. Viper Delight, 40% of HLE's damage. Makes sense. We look at Doran and Peanut. Lower end, so the damage is coming out from Viper and Delight. Viper and Delight also very high in gold. Makes sense. So maybe the return isn't quite as high as other teams, at least, the difference. But Viper and Delight are packing 40% of the punch. Tomo Isla, second combined at 37.9% for 100 Thieves. So they're dealing a lot of damage. We look at, Sniper not dealing a lot, so it's offset in that way. Aiming Moham, very high, 37.2%, but also lead in gold at 38.4%. So actually giving negative share based off of that. Probably in part due to Showmaker. In mid lane, Showmaker, 23.4% of the team's gold. And with that in mind, 23.4% of the team's gold is probably dealing, mid to upper 20s in damage and offsets it. Lower end, Betty Woody, 32%. These are weak side. These are truly weak side bot lanes. Betty Woody, Marble, Vista, CEO, and Lions, 3 minor region bot lanes. It does make you wonder how this is going to go for the stronger, Tomo, Isla, Supa, historically very high damage, 80 carry, Shogun, BA. There's potential there to be taking, packing a punch where the other bot lane really isn't. Gold, said Supa Alvaro, high in gold, not necessarily in damage, but maybe that'll come around. Mad trying to invest in their carries. Lower end of resources, Shogun, BA. Imagine if Vikings took Katie's, said, okay, Katie, you're going to go down to 23% of the team's gold, and we're going to give that 2.3% to Shogun, worth of creeps and things like that. Vikings probably win VCS. Masubusio, lower end. Easy Love, Elio, lower end. So once again, we see that it's actually interesting. So we have both Vietnamese mid laners there, lower end of damage share, and then we see both Vietnamese bot lane duos, lower end in gold share for bot lane. So, how they were approaching the meta, I guess, were similar in their playoffs. Keep in mind this is all playoff stats, but I just thought this would be interesting to, kind of mull over and ramble about for a little while, just trying to draw, some ideas about some of these teams. And truly who plays towards top side, who's getting more from their top side, bot lane, mid lane, whose jungler is carrying the hardest, who's playing a low resource game. So that's it for the video. Thank you for watching. If you like the video, like it, subscribe to the channel for daily League of Legends content. Follow me on Twitter, join the Discord, become a YouTube supporter, and hope to see you again tomorrow.